Tell me about the insectoids. Now, I know there's many species, but which ones have you been exposed to?
Primarily the indigenous insectoids on Mars, which I realize some people refer to them as a mantid species, which I don't necessarily want to disagree with because, potato, so I don't think that that's wrong. But to me, they really look more or less like a giant ant. So you can call them a mantid species. I have no problem with that. But I think sometimes the confusion is that a mantid species is like a praying mantis. And that's not my experience of them at all, that they're basically like a giant ant. I maybe say I've heard these terminology thrown around interchangeably, and I'm not so sure that they're interchangeable, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Are they in other places besides Mars?
I think there are a number of insectoid species. We certainly have an indigenous insectoid species here on planet Earth that's subterranean, indigenous insectoid species on Mars. And there are other insectoid species that I'm aware of that are different than that as well. So,
could you give me some examples to the audience of some different types of insectoids besides like the ants and the mantis people?
Sure. There was another species that we encountered who their physiological stance and their physiological posture was very, very different. So these insectoids that we dealt with on Mars, you basically just think of an ant that's standing up. So it's basically on two legs. The middle appendages can be used to steady themselves or as other feet if they need to, or they can be used as an extra set of hands. So they're kind of an appendage that can be sort of an either or, but they tend to upright walk. There is another insectoid species that we encountered that was much taller, first of all. The indigenous insectoids from Mars were 5.5 feet tall. About the drones are about 5.5 feet tall. The leader of the hive was not a queen, it's not a female, it's a male, so it's referred to as a king, and they're much larger, 8 times the size probably. But we've experienced another insectoid species who basically was on 4 appendages with a torso that kind of came up from, a body that was parallel to the ground with 2 very large appendages, which sort of appeared like grippers like that, but then these appendages could unfold, and there was like 7 or 8 little phalanges that they could manipulate objects with, or kind of bring them together like 3 appendages. It was very peculiar, but they're much larger. They probably stand, easily 8 to 10 feet tall from the ground.